Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute greatest accumulation of wealth human history has ever seen. We are talking about a fortune so unimaginably vast, it literally broke economies and reshaped world maps. So, let's jump right into it.
Now think about the contrast between myth and reality for a second. Growing up, a lot of us heard the Hindu myths about Lanka, that legendary city of gold built by Vishwakarma, famously ruled by Ravana. Right? It's a beautiful myth. But what if I told you there was an actual, real-life empire of gold right here on Earth just 800 years ago? Enter Mansa Musa and the staggering reality of the Mali Empire.
To really grasp this, we have to look at the sheer scale of the wealth. When we think rich today, we think of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates. But honestly, their modern fortunes look like literal grains of sand next to Mansa Musa. Historians conservatively put his net worth somewhere around $300 to $400 billion. But a lot of experts argue it was actually in the trillions. Trillions with a T. His wealth was quite literally incalculable.
Section 1. The Real Empire of Gold. West Africa's Superpower.
Section 2. The Mysterious Atlantic Journey, a Royal Disappearance.
So how exactly does a 14th century kingdom amass that kind of cash? Well, the origin story is actually a crazy mystery. Back in 1312, Mali was ruled by King Abu Bakr II, and this guy was obsessed, and I mean completely obsessed, with finding out what was on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. He sent out 200 ships and 10,000 men to explore it. Years go by, and only one single ship comes back. The survivors were terrified, claiming some giant sea monster swallowed the rest of the fleet in a massive whirlpool. But did that stop the king? No way. He was totally convinced there was a prosperous land out there. So he gathers this staggering fleet, 2,000 ships, 50,000 men, leaves his deputy, Mansa Musa, in charge, sails into the Atlantic, and is literally never seen again, vanished. So by default, Musa becomes the permanent king of Mali.
Section 3. Gold, Salt, and New Tax. Mansa Musa's Economy.
So, Musa takes the throne after this bizarre disappearance, but he doesn't just sit back and relax. He took this accidental inheritance and turned it into an absolute global economic machine. The geopolitical footprint of Mali under his rule was just staggering. We're talking about an empire covering 500,000 square miles. That's bigger than many modern nations combined. It stretched all the way from the Niger River deep into the Sahara Desert, right across to the western forests. At its peak, the Mali Empire held 5% of the entire global population. This wasn't just a rich state, it was a bona fide global superpower.
And what exactly fueled this superpower? Get this, a full 50% of the entire global gold supply was being pulled straight out of Mali's ground, specifically from the incredibly rich Bambouk and beer mines. Just imagine that for a second, controlling half of the world's most precious resource entirely inside your own borders. But here's a really fascinating twist when it comes to historical economics. Alongside all that gold, they also had salt from the Tagaza mines up in the northern Sahara. Now today, we think of salt as this super cheap everyday item you grab at the grocery store. But back in the scorching desert of the 14th century, salt was absolutely crucial for survival and preserving food. The demand was massive, the supply was limited, which meant that, pound for pound, salt was often traded equally for gold. Crazy, right?
Okay, so let's look at how this builds up. Having wealth in the ground doesn't automatically give you a rich empire, right? You have to manage it correctly. Musa's predecessors basically just relied on raw mining, but Musa, he brought in this genius, centralized taxation system. He didn't just own the mines. He taxed every single ounce of gold and salt that came out of the ground. And then, here's the kicker, he taxes again when it was traded in the markets. That brilliant policy is what really unified his expanding empire and just catapulted his wealth into the stratosphere.
Section 4. History's Most Expensive Journey, the 1324 Hajj Pilgrimage.
All right, so the year is 1324, and Mansa Musa is ready to show the world exactly what kind of wealth he's amassed. And guys, this wasn't just a caravan. This was a moving city marching across the blazing Sahara. Picture this, 60,000 people, all decked out in fine Persian silk. Leading the pack are 500 soldiers, and each one of them is carrying a staff made of solid gold. Behind them march 80 camels, and each camel is carrying up to 300 pounds, about 130 kilos, of gold dust. The logistics of this are just mind-boggling. They supposedly built a brand new mosque every single Friday wherever they happened to stop. And get this, Once when his wife complained about the desert dust, Musa just casually ordered his thousands of workers to dig a massive irrigation canal overnight just to bring her water. I mean, wow.
21,000. That is the estimated total number of kilograms of pure gold that Mansa Musa's caravan was hauling on this single journey. To put that in perspective, in today's market, that amount of gold would be worth billions and billions of dollars, just being casually transported across the desert on the backs of camels.
Section 5. Charity that sank the economy. The Cairo effect.
So, it turns out you actually can be too generous. Let's talk about the Cairo effect. When Musa's caravan rolled into Cairo, Egypt, he was just giving out gold to everyone. The poor, the soldiers, the merchants. He was buying up basic souvenirs at these wildly inflated prices. And well, this massive influx of gold completely flooded the market. Supplies skyrocketed, and naturally the value of gold just plummeted. He essentially gave away so much wealth that he completely crashed the local currency, triggering a severe 10-year period of hyperinflation across the Middle East. It is literally the only time in recorded history that one single man directly controlled and crashed the price of gold across the entire Mediterranean.
But, despite the economic chaos he accidentally caused, Musa was a total master of diplomacy and incredibly devoted to his faith. There's this great story where he meets the Sultan of Egypt, and strict protocol demanded that Musa bowed to him. But according to historians like Ibn Umar and Ibn Khaldun, Musa flat out refused, declaring he would only bow to God. So he comes up with this brilliant compromise. He kisses the ground for Allah while in the Sultan's presence. It was a genius way to maintain his own royal dignity while technically showing respect. A true masterclass in soft power.
And ultimately, this whole pilgrimage turned out to be the ultimate PR campaign. Before this, Europe barely even knew Mali existed, but suddenly, tales of this African king and his literal rivers of gold are reaching merchants in Europe and Arabia. Because of this, Mali was finally put on world maps. The most famous one actually depicts Mansa Musa sitting on a throne, proudly holding up this giant golden coin. The secret of African wealth was officially out.
Section 6. End of the richest empire. The fall of Mali.
Because as history always seems to teach us, no golden age lasts forever. Mansa Musa passed away sometime between 1332 and 1337, and unfortunately his son took over, and let's just say he completely lacked his dad's visionary leadership. To find his own lavish lifestyle, this new king jacked up taxes heavily, which obviously sparked outrage. Corrupt ministers started raiding the treasury, internal rebellions flared up. It was a mess. Sensing all this weakness, neighboring forces started moving in. By the 15th century, the rising Songhai Empire captures Timbuktu, the crown jewel of the empire. And then by the 16th century, a Moroccan invasion completely shatters whatever was left of the once mighty Mali.
But look, we really shouldn't just remember Mali for its collapse. Mansa Musa's true legacy is about so much more than just his incalculable wealth. He used his massive resources to build a kingdom that was founded on justice, religious tolerance, and stability. He united all these diverse populations and fostered an environment where scholarship, safety, and trade could just thrive side by side. Sure, he was rich in gold, absolutely, but he was also incredibly rich in wisdom and statecraft.
Just imagine it, possessing wealth so vast that a casual spending spree could literally topple a foreign economy. It is so hard to even wrap our modern minds around a personal fortune of trillions of dollars. So I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. If you were suddenly handed the keys to Mansa Musa's unimaginable fortune today, what is the very first thing you would buy?